Hi, this is Dr. Malik, and welcome to my channel, Enlightenment, the Science of Spirituality. Let's get started. In this very first video, we'll be discussing these topics: zero to infinity, touching upon mathematical aspect of reality. Space-time, is it real or illusory from physics perspective? Experiential reality, life, and what is its purpose? That we are born, we face a certain death, and wonder what happens beyond. An ancient concept of non-duality comes next. Then we touch upon the oxymoron nature of spiritual journey. Then self-realization, or Turiya, or the level 4 consciousness. Finally, ending with what enlightenment means, what happens to enlightened beings, how their life changes, and what comes next for them. So here's the first topic for today: zero to infinity. You can see some nice pictures, the entire universe, and somebody looking into the cosmos so that they are the cosmos. And then the alpha and omega seeming to be like zero and infinity. And the images of collisions in the Large Hadron Collider. So this zero and infinity, they're actually the absolute and the relative states of reality. For example, when you are in your deep sleep, what is your experience now? Where is the self? Like, where is Dr. M? Where is planet Earth? Where is the Milky Way? Where is your worry about your lives and death? So, zero is when you look at entire totality with infinite input and infinite processing power, when brought together, lead to zero output. Or in other words, seems like the entire machinery of life has come to a halt, and that the past, the present, and the future come together as one, a single point, which encompasses all of the infinity within itself. So if you look at it, zero, or this nothing, which actually is not nothing, is dimensionless, got no size, no shape, no location, no beginning or an end, therefore no need for a creator or no worry about its end. If you have such an entity which is everywhere, it has nowhere to go, and therefore, by definition, immobile. And once you're immobile, there is no need for space-time or any entities within it. Now let's look at the next slide, which brings us to space-time. Is this real or illusory? So from the physics perspective, non-relativistic classical mechanics used to treat time as a universal quantity, which was tick tock, ticking at a constant rate, regardless of whether there was an observer or whether there was anything at all. And the space was considered a separate entity and was assumed to be Euclidean. Now, in the early part of the 20th century, special relativity deemed space-time as a single entity, but the space was flat. Then came soon after general relativity in about 10 more years. And then the space was allowed to be bent, or the fabric of space-time was allowed to be bent. And this bending of space-time is how they explained gravity. So gravity was no longer a force now, and it was simply that mass and the space-time, their interaction was resulting in gravity. Then this worked very well on the larger scale, but when you started pouring or peering into the really small stuff at the level of atoms or electrons or like quarks or bosons, classical mechanics or general relativity didn't make any sense. The observations were very weird, to put it lightly, and unpredictable. So many other theories came which tried to merge this quantum mechanics and the classical general relativity into unified field theory. String theory came, M theory came, loop quantum gravity. And currently, it's widely believed that the space-time is an emergent rather than a fundamental phenomenon. From fields to entanglement to emergent, space-time and everything within may be simply holographic. We may be living in a simulation. But if there is a simulation, it's got to be running on some sort of memory or information. So the background true nature of space-time may be simply information, which can be then interpreted in infinite ways by the observer. The collapse of wave function that they talk about, it's unknown whether it depends on the observer or not, something that they are actively researching on. So this current incomplete scientific understanding kind of seem to agree with the non-dual spiritual understanding, which has been around for thousands of years, in which the experience of this space-time and everything within has been called Maya or illusory, including the pursuit of spirituality and enlightenment, which is also your illusion. There is no up or down, in or out. There is no yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It is just one moment which is divided into infinite objects and timelines by the observer through the use of information or memory, which then generates thoughts and a sense of self. And when you start examining this self who's looking at all this, begs the question, who am I? Let's look at the next slide here. Experiential reality. We already touched upon quite a bit of this in the previous slide. So experiential reality is just relatively real to the observer. And since no two objects having mass can occupy the same space-time, so the perspective of all observers will vary. And wherever there is similarity or agreement, the things feel quite a bit real. Like a tomato is a tomato because we all agree what a tomato is, how it should smell, how it should feel when you touch it, how it should look when you look at it, what size dimension it should have, and what happens to it if it keeps sitting in a place. Like I can make a fake tomato, then it's not going to rot over time. So then I will know that maybe it is made out of plastic or something. It's not real. So we're discussing what reality is over here. So this experiential reality, or one that is observed by the observer, is completely relative. It's not absolute. And when it is shared and taught and inferred via symbols, images, be it digital or virtual or holographic, it can be actually imparted as knowledge or teachings and can be quite useful in furthering your materialistic desires. So, as human beings, we experience relative reality during the dream state. And if you look at the first image, you'll notice that the EEG waves during non-dreaming deep sleep state are different than the wakeful state. But if you look at the REM phase, when you're actively dreaming, REM stands for rapid eye movement, they look very much similar to the ones found in the wakeful state, which makes me wonder if this life is nothing but my dream. And within this dream, I am born, face a certain death, and wonder what comes after. It's like watching a movie, not realizing that the movie doesn't affect the screen that it's played on. We are just looking at reality from a human perspective. Imagine a cat with you in the same room as you, does not see what you see, does not smell what you smell, does not hear what you hear, does not interpret things the way you do. Now, which reality do you think is more real? Is it the human reality or the cat? And you can keep on going and going and going about different observers. So we all have these relativistic tools available to us to decipher reality. For example, only 0.003% of the electromagnetic spectrum is able to be sensed by our sensory apparatus. So how real can a reality be which is constructed out of such limited input? No matter how good your processor, with extremely limited input, using any form of logical system, the output is going to be unreal. So our experiential reality, or this non-dual experience where there is an observer and observed, there's a sense of inside and outside, feeling like I'm made out of this flesh and bones bounded by the skin, does not seem real. And all of this non-dualistic experience during deep sleep simply collapses due to lack of access to memory. Let's look at the next one, which is about life and its purpose. So historically, as biology, I'm a medical doctor. I started my journey in medical school thinking that I'll find a lot to learn and maybe I will figure out what or who I am in medical school. And to my utter surprise, medical school, if at all, maybe made my resolve even stronger to figure out who I am because these medical doctors, don't seem to know. So life in its narrow sense is transient, interwoven, biological, evolving, complex, organized, sensitive activity ranging from simple viruses, which are between living and non-living, to the multicellular humans like you and me. And it seems to propagate under favorable circumstances and hibernate or become extinct under unfavorable ones. Many species have gone extinct. And many have this ability to hibernate. So if you look at a bacteria when it's under harsh conditions, has this ability to become a spore I look at spore as an enlightened bacteria. It has hacked life itself, whereas a regular bacteria would be dead in 20 minutes. A spore can survive for years and years and years. Compare the timeline of 20 minutes to many, many years in terms of survival, waiting for the favorable circumstances to return so that it can turn back its mechanism of life, switch it on, and go on with the business of life. Do you know that if you freeze your egg or sperms, you can come back 20, 30, 50 years later and then thaw that sperm or the egg and create a human life out of that? So this freezing activity, if you look at it more closely, what that is or what that means is that you are shutting down the sensory apparatus. And when you shut down the sensory apparatus, then that experience is akin to sleep or deep sleep state, or in certain aspect death, because there are no thoughts there for you to experience any form of reality in the relative sense, where things are big and small, fast and slow, up and down, or anywhere in between. That state, the immortal state, the immutable state, the formless state, once you reach that state, you become eternal, unbound, and unable to be alive or dead. So what is this purpose of life? Now let's look at life in a broader sense, like a memory-based, observer-specific, shared experience involving relative, observed, quantized matter within the space-time, emerging from the absolute, unbound, eternal, base, static reality, which is the creator. So, from the subatomic elementary bosons and quarks to the complex biologic life and the entire multiverse or the cosmos, this relativistic life is teeming everywhere at all scales. Do you think an atom or an electron within an atom, simplest one, let's say hydrogen, if an electron forgets that it is bound to this particular proton, will it just hover around or stay in that cloud of probability, which by the way never ends? How will it know where it's supposed to be? It could be anywhere else in the universe. But why that particular proton? So this whole idea of bond, whether it's chemical bond or bond of marriage or bond of friendship or bond of love or any kind of bond, like what is binding the galaxies together? What is binding the universe together? What is binding the atoms? What's binding the atoms together to make molecules? So you can think of forces being either attractive or repulsive, and we've given them a lot of different names based on the scale at which they are experienced and their strength. I think what life really is a rebellion to the attractive force. As long as a form or a shape can prevent its own collapse, it stays alive. And when it's unable to do so, either goes into a sleep mode or becomes extinct. And it perpetuates itself or the knowledge that it has learned to its offspring. Let's look at the purpose of life now. So the life's purpose, besides obviously meeting our biological needs in the narrow sense, is to realize your own true nature. so to say, hack reality so that you can be fearless in the pursuit of life. For only that is living can die, which means that you are living also means that you are dying. And the one who's not dying comfortably can never live comfortably. Just remember that. So the purpose of life becomes more apparent, or you become more lively when you understand the answer to the question, who am I? And that is the purpose of this video presentation, to help you understand that. But I cannot explain it to you, no matter how many words or infinite words I might use, or gestures or examples. It must dawn upon you within a moment. And in that moment, everything that is there will become very, very lucid or clear to you. Or you will experience what we refer to as enlightenment, or the light within. It'll be like a light bulb in your head. So let's move on to the next one, which we kind of already started discussing in the previous slide, about birth, death, and beyond. Here in these images, you can see all the different stages of life, and the baby being born, and you're in the morgue, and maybe some sort of energy is leaving your body, which continues despite the physical body being dead. So a lot of things here are unknown to mankind, and let's discuss based on what is known. So according to science, you and me, we are nothing but the physical body, which is conceived at fertilization and born at the time of birth, dies at the time of death, and lives in between those two moments, which constitute your entire life. Now, self-inquiry through a mere thought experiment, that all that you know about the universe, whether it's the Big Bang and the 13.8 billion light years, or the 90 billion light years of the known universe, or anything, that what is your name, and what is your occupation, and what you ate this morning, and what you're going to do tonight, or what you're planning to do tomorrow, or what will happen to the world after you're gone or dead. All thoughts that are arising within you, if somehow you can turn them off just for a moment, you will realize what all this is. This whole idea that you're born is nothing but a memory. This whole idea that you're dying and you'll be dead and there will be something beyond that is nothing but a memory. So whenever we turn off this access to memory, we understand there was no cycling going on. So this cyclical nature of life, in which there's a tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock time, and a space in which this is happening, and the infinity within it is experienced, the dualistic experience of life and death is a farce. In all absolute reality, just go to sleep, or for one moment detach yourself from memory, all forms of memory. Then what you will experience is eternity. There will be no life, there will be no death, there will be no suffering, there will be no fear. That will help you reach your true potential. So beyond this illusion of birth and death, your life, or this realization, or the understanding, or the experience, or the fourth level of consciousness, or Turiya, gives you this moksha or nirvana that they talk about. the exit from the reincarnation or the suffering of life and death. Let's move on. What is on the next slide here? So we come back to this ancient concept of non-duality, which in Sanskrit, Advaita, one of the Mahavakyas in these Upanishads is Tat Tvam Asi, or that thou art. It's a mathematical equation which simply equates the universe to your own self. Means you are it. In some of these pictures, you can see that as if you are looking at yourself playing this game of hide and seek, forgetting that all there is just you, and taking life so seriously that you begin to suffer. So, this unity that you experience during mystical experience or through some drugs that enhance your brain function in some way, such as DMT or magic mushrooms, or in the previous times LSD. So all these things, the altered sense of consciousness, or even psychotic people in psych wards, they seem to be connecting to alternate realities. And to them, those realities are as real as this reality is for you and me. Once you experience these alternate states of reality, in which dimensions either change or merge, and you have this out of body experience, or the experience that you are everything there is, and you lose track of space and time, they help you realize that what the true basis of all that is living is an immutable self which is non-dual, self which is eternal, self that has nowhere to go, it doesn't come from anywhere, has no creator, has no ending, and is untouched by this experiential reality or the relative reality, and is the absolute form of truth. So by understanding your own self, by questioning as to who I am or who am I, you can understand the true nature of all there is. So Tattvamasi, or that thou art, or you are it. Let's move on to the next slide, which is now talking about the spiritual journey. Now you understand that spiritual journey is an oxymoron, because by now you must have understood that there is no inside or outside. Your true nature is immobile. It cannot go anywhere. It does not experience any form of time or space. So without space-time, how can you discuss journey? Spiritual journey isn't a journey. It's not looking inside or looking for answers outside. It's not where, it's not when. It's all there is you. So for those who feel stuck in this physical manifestation and strongly identify themselves as a separate being, having an inside and an outside, and are seeking freedom from the misery of going through this purposeful life, or simply wanting more than being an ordinary human, their spiritual journey can be pretty tough. Pretty tough. You can sit and meditate, find guru after guru, or religion after religion for that matter. hope to attain nirvana, or hope to go to heaven and avoid hell through doing certain things which are considered good and avoiding doing things which are considered bad. If you could just wake up, what I mean by wake up is just go to sleep. Go to sleep means stop using memory. Within this one moment, it will all become clear to you as to what you are. And it happens to people when they are very stressed, just like the enlightened bacteria becomes enlightened during extremely stressful times, harsh environment. From all the prophets and all the gurus and all the religious leaders everywhere on this planet, they all looked for enlightenment or got enlightened because of the hardships that they knew in their life. So if there is something to learn from them, it is how to overcome hardship. And even a bacteria knows how to do that. Go into hibernation mode. So all these spiritual practices that are there, practiced by all kinds of people all over the world, they agree on one thing, is that maybe it's best to become motionless. And motionless simply means thoughtless. Because your mind must also become thoughtless. You are not the mind, you are not the body. You are not the mind, you are not the body. You are that immobile basis upon which the mind and the body comes into existence, which means you are the creator. Now that does not mean you start going and announcing that you're the creator, and that this simply means that the creator is omnipotent everywhere. You are as much a creator as a rock is, or the soil is, or a seed is, or another person that you're talking to is. So it's not something special. It's just that all there is this special you. So for those who are already spiritually awakened, there are no more questions, there is no more seeking. They do not seek any freedom from any prison because they realize the prison is also themselves. The prisoner is also themselves. The prisoner is also themselves. So they just laugh at this life, at its misery, and stay untouched by all suffering, even though they are still in the human form. So they do experience pain. They do experience joy. They do experience anger. But they stay detached, smiling at whatever life throws at them. Let's look at this next one. Talks about self-realization. So in the Western mechanistic sense, self-realization or reaching your true potential has mainly materialistic goals, like how to get rich, how to get your Rolls Royce or a private jet, or how to book a flight on one of the rockets to go see space. So professional, family goals, pleasure, avoiding pain, and mental and physical suffering. Well, these are goals for any life. But in the Eastern holistic sense, self-realization meant or means something else. It means exploring your own self and realizing that all there is you. That brings us to the idea of consciousness. I think that at all levels of life itself, when I say life, I mean in the broadest of the sense, from a quark to a boson, to a proton, to a neutron or a photon, or an electron, or molecules thereon, and different forms of atoms, and the tissue of life, or the organs or organ systems, and then individuals and families, and our towns and cities, and states and nations, and the entire planet, the solar system, and the galaxy, and multiple galaxies. What I'm saying is, consciousness is there at every level. It is not like stupid matter somehow suddenly turned into a conscious you and me. Yes, it is evolving. It is just like how a child grows. It knows more and more, understands more and more. So we are at a human level of understanding. Same way a hydrogen atom is at a hydrogen atom level of understanding. And at all understandings, they cannot go up and down in their understanding without relinquishing what they are. So if you want to experience more than what human beings experience as reality, you must detach yourself from the human reality and then zoom out or zoom in to experience different states of reality or consciousness at various levels. And which is what some people talk about, certain outer body experiences and going to the astral plane and having ESP or extrasensory perception, or some siddhis where they can predict future about people and pull out information seemingly out of thin air. So I have known people who do this, and this is very real, as much as real as a table or a chair is to you and me. So what are these different consciousness levels? The waking state, which hopefully you are in right now, and a dream state when you're dreaming while you're asleep, a deep sleep state in which you experience non-duality, and this fourth non-dual or indescribable, incomprehensible, unthinkable experience, which is unsullied or untouched by your memory. When I say your memory, I mean you being a human, let alone whatever memory you have of this small lifetime. This understanding, or your true self, is the blissful, eternal, unbound self that people who are seeking enlightenment experience. And once they experience this, it is not something you can miss. It is not like, how do I know if I'm enlightened? Let me go on Google and search things. It is not about that. Once you experience this, there's no going back to the way you were. So you must be physically, mentally ready to accept changes in your life. Let's look at this enlightenment. In the background, you can see the chakra system moving from the first to the last chakra. As you can see, they're color coded from red to purple or violet, just like the Roy G. Biv or the Vibgyor of the visible spectrum of light. Obviously isn't the correct denotion, because when you are enlightened, the visible light has nothing to do with it. Anyways, so with self-realization or enlightenment, this direct non-dualistic experience, and let me tell you one more time, that it is not what you hear and listen to, or have one guru speak, or read this book or that book that can reach you enlightenment in your life. It will happen to you during extreme stress, or out of the blue when you're least expecting it. And once it happens, there's no going back. It is going to cause transformative changes to your identity, your role and purpose in your life. It'll change the meaning of what life and death is and what reality is. And it'll take away the fear of death completely. And a subtle detachment will ensue after that. And it'll end the suffering for you and bring blissful peace, love, joy, reason, expansion, understanding and acceptance of the life the way it is. The materialistic pursuit of pleasure and comfort will then get replaced by compassion, by harmony, and the urge to end conflicts, to restore unity, despite relativistic conditioning of who you think you were before enlightenment, which means conditioning due to who your parents were, in what times you were born, where you were born, what type of education system you went to, what religion you followed, or what you are pursuing in your life. All those goals will transition. You will still feel pain, anger, grief. You will get sick. This body will age and perish like anything else that lives does. But you will understand the true nature of self, life and death. And you will regard all this as a self-induced state, a state that cannot touch you, no matter what happens to this state here. Your identity and purpose will no longer be self-centered or even human-centric. And your presence and the presence of these enlightened beings will rejuvenate life not only for you, but for entire living cosmos. Thank you. This is Dr. Harish Malik signing off. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. See you in the next video, where we will look at more topics like these in greater details. All the best in your search of enlightenment.